Where's he from?
He came from Corfu, which is where they have, they have those beautiful carriage horses
Yes,
there.
yes.
So he was from there.
I'm astonished. It's a gorgeous story, and I'm really happy that you're here giving this talk. I would like to know what you ate. And that's my first question. My second question is what is your focus with your environmental work? Sort of who and where are you solo? Are you independent, or do you work with any other groups that are working for the environment in Greece?
Okay, so I work for all of the environmental groups in Greece as a consultant. So I don't think there's anybody that I haven't worked in some way for. But I never was, with Arcturus I did work quite closely with them
With whom?
No, Arcturus. It's the bears and the wolves. Yeah, I worked with them for 7 years or something. Not all the time, and then from time to time, for a long time afterwards, making paths and things like that. And with the Hellenic Ornithological Society, and with the people in Prespa, and the people in Dadia, I worked with those. And on and off with other people, just doing various things, yeah. And what did I eat? I ate, that disgusting soup that you can get that is in little packets, and you add boiling water.
Yeah.
I had that. And more or less anything that I could get that wouldn't go bad, and I could carry about 3 days food of that kind. And when I got to a village, I would normally have egg and chips or something like that. Yeah.
Were you knowledgeable to know things you could pick in the forest?
Oh yeah, I do know that. I just couldn't be bothered to do it.
Oh, okay, you were busy.
Yeah, but I mean, if I found, when there are berries and stuff, I would eat them. But I didn't, not really that. I mean, I didn't do anything like cook worms or anything, but I could have, I suppose, if I was really hungry. But I didn't get to, I didn't really get to that state at all. I mean, if I didn't have anything to eat for a couple of days, I didn't really mind very much, And then I would always get to a village, and they would always have chips or something that I could eat. So that was okay.
And George?
George could always eat grass. So we always went at times of year when there was grass. And he could get, wherever there are, where in the mountains, there are always shepherds. And they've always got barley or maize that they give to their sheep or cows. So I could always buy for him. And he could eat an enormous amount of that as well. I was very surprised because your horses, I don't know, a few kilos. He would eat 7 kilos of maize if he just would eat it. And I never thought he would eat and make himself ill. He never showed any signs of doing anything like that. He would leave it when he was bored with it. And grass and anything I could find that I thought he might like, I got for him. And we like bread as well. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say one other thing, which is that I'm originally from Montana, and I was home 6 or 7 years ago walking through an extraordinarily gorgeous and pristine area behind a friend's house where there's a river. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe there's no trash and no litter. And I was describing to her how it was in Greece, and she looked at me and she said, don't you know how this looked 30 years ago? And I said, no. And she said, it was trashed. And she said, people, one by one, worked and worked and worked. And so it gave me hope. And I thank you for all your work.
A wonderful story. Could you do a big picture for us on where the Greek countryside is going? I mean, it seems so hard to believe that children are actually staying in the villages and continuing the traditions of their parents. It's a very difficult life. You see them coming back here. Is the countryside dying, or has the crisis moved people back to the remote villages? What's your assessment of where the places you rode in the past, where they'll be in another 10 or 20 years?
I don't know. A lot of people have made the effort to go back to the villages, but loads of them are people who've got much more wish to go back than knowledge about how to go back. And if in a village there is no school, how can people go back? And if there is no way to make a living with agriculture, how can you go back? So people are trying to find ways to, trying to think of ways to add value to products that you can make in places like that, growing berries, doing agri-tourism of various kinds. But I think the areas where that happens are those areas that are kind of honeypot attraction areas that are, beautiful and people know about them. And if tourists go there, there's a chance that you can make a living with tourists. Tourists don't go there. You've got to make a living in some other way, and it seems incredibly difficult to do that. When the Common Agricultural Policy came and kind of really, really encouraged farms to become bigger and made it actually impossible for small farms to survive, all of that has got to be reversed, and that's a very hard thing to do. I mean, the university was actually producing agricultural students who believed that, that the one thing they had to do was to make farming more, you can't have 20 cows and a few sheep and half a dozen of this. You've got to have 250 cows minimum. And if you do that, then somebody else has got to have so many acres of maize, and the infrastructure is huge, actually. And I met guys who were trying to go back, or trying to stay even, and they had paid something like 30,000 euros just to try to have their sheep farm, let's say, in accordance with the law, because obviously, you can't have filthy old sheds, which most of them did have, and which were a good, perfectly good way to make cheese and all those other things, but you can't do that and expect to sell to the cities in sufficient quantities to live well. You can't. And I see so many people still going out of business who are good farmers and who knew how to do stuff. So I don't know. I think people with olives and stuff in Messenia seem to be doing some good. They seem to be surviving. So perhaps you can. I don't know. I can't see how small farmers can survive with the economic climate as it is now. And if you're a small farmer and you've done it all your life and you can't survive, how is a person supposed to go back to a village with no expertise and survive? I don't see how they can. So I don't know. That's how I feel it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your lovely talk. I was just wondering if you had a plan from the beginning how you were going to get around Greece, or how did you discover what you wanted to see and where you wanted to go?
Well, as Diana explained, I had absolutely no idea where I was going to go or what I was going to see. And I kind of just set off and thought, well, the very first ride that I did because I hadn't got any money and I had lost my job. And I had to get back to Thessaloniki and work for Cambridge doing exams. So I thought, well, since I want to keep my horse and I haven't got enough money to put him in a lorry, I'll ride him. So that's what I did. And after I'd done that, I realised that I really wanted to see more things and discover more things. And I had some ideas about things that I would like to see, like I'd heard from friends that Ambrakikos was a beautiful place to see birds, and I had heard that the mountain Giona was amazing, so I thought, well, I'll go there and see what they're like. And then I found, you know, on the way there, you see all kinds of wonderful things. I didn't really think, oh, I'll go to Delphi, let's say. I just thought, oh, Delphi's on the way there, so I'll have a look. Yeah, that's what I did, really. I didn't really prepare anything more than that. I mean, I did want to go to the very end of Greece, which was really nearly the end of Europe, just to have been there, you know, but that's the kind of thing I did. Yes?
I have one more question. Did you, when you were up Thessaloniki way, did you work with the American Farm School at all, or visit them?
I know Randy Warner very well, but I didn't work with the farm school. I had, when I had a riding school, it belonged, it was on the land belonging to Dimitri Litsas, who worked for the farm school. So I had some kind of contact with them, but I never worked with them.
Because they do very good work too.
Yes, yes, they do.
Compared to the 1950s, when I was a kid here, it seems that, you know, horses are disappearing. I mean, when I was a kid, we still had a military that had horses. The Greek police were still on horses. Around our house in Marousi, there were horses dragging carts with vegetables and things on it. You go to a place like England, for example, and you find the police are still on horses. You find there's a mounted cavalry still there. You see all the king's horses and all the king's men always parading up and down. You see people in the middle of London riding on Rotten Row on their horses. Outside of my house, right in Notting Hill Gate there every morning, horses walk by me with riders. You don't see that in Greece. You don't see any horses in Greece. You see donkeys. You go to the islands, you see donkeys and mules. And I mean, I go a lot to the islands of Care. I don't think I've ever seen a horse there. You know? So it seems to me that horses are kind of disappearing from the Greek horizon, with the exception of a few riding clubs that exist, you know, have opened up, which is a very small percentage of horses. But obviously no Greek police on horses. Even in New York, the police are on horses, you know. Somehow here in Greece, the horse element seems to have disappeared, and the donkeys seem to be, you know, still very powerful. But in places like Idra, obviously you need donkeys, you know. Donkeys are better at carrying loads, you know, up to mountain villages. They're more, slow-footed. And I didn't even know there's a racetrack in Athens anymore. You know, it used to be down in Phaleron, and they closed it. Another cultural center there. Anyway, just an observation that in my lifetime, you know, the presence of horses seems to have diminished enormously. You know.
It's interesting, but there was, until the crisis, lots of people got very interested. For example, in the horses in Crete, that are Aravani, you know, they make this, and they race those, and those are incredibly valuable. And people are very interested in those. And then, you know, some villages I went to with George, they had like 120 horses. It's quite, you know, that was a village called Skolari near to Thessaloniki, but everywhere there was. But now, you know, to have a horse was a hobby, and a lot of people can't do that anymore. You know. But there was a lot of horses, and now a lot of horses have been kind of thrown away. And so there are, in the lake of Kirkini, for example, there's about 250 feral horses there, and of course they can't survive without feeding and stuff like that, so they get in a terrible state, loads of them die, people shoot them, and it's not a good situation, because so many people got horses, just for fun, you know, and then now they can't afford them, they don't know what to do with them, so they just put them on the mountain, you know, so that's not good.
Well, even in places like Kifissia, you would go there and there were like 50 or 60 horse carriages waiting to take you through Kifissia.
Yeah.
Even, you know, quite recently.
Yeah.
But somehow this horse element seems to have disappeared. Perhaps on places like Spetses, but even the carriages there are disappearing because they're allowing taxis, and you go there in the winter and then there are more horse carriages, you know. There are almost a few there just for show, you know. I mean, I felt sorry for the poor horses, but, you know, having to drag these carriages around under dismal conditions. But anyway,
yeah, well, George, he refused to be a carriage horse in Corfu. He just said, no, I'm not going to be a carriage horse.
right.
A carriage horse is rubbish. Yes, but no, I think there was a time, but yeah, I'm not sure. And you know what? When I was in Evros, they did put the police on horses. Of course, they couldn't really stay on the horses for very long, but they were supposed to go on horses because it was the only way to kind of patrol the river. So they thought, oh, if they ride horses, they'll be able to see who's coming across the river and everything like that. Of course, they couldn't see who's coming because they couldn't really manage the horses, but they tried. And then they hadn't got anybody to shoe the horses because the horses had gone from that area and they were trying to bring them back. There was only one blacksmith. So I ended up shoeing the police horses. So I said, I can't shoe all the police horses all the time. I'm not going to do that. So, yeah. And I don't know what happened after that because too many policemen fell off. So I think they decided that, you know, police horses wasn't such a good idea. But they did try. They did think it could work, but it wasn't quite carried out as ideal, under ideal conditions. Yes. So,
Just one more. I have a friend whose daughter learned horse therapy.
oh yes,
So I saw her actually massage horses.
yes,
They loved it. Did George like that?
he did. He liked that very much. Yes, he did. I think, yeah, he did. Dogs like it. Yeah, I think animals like to be massaged. Yeah, they do. And I think you can make them much better. You know, you can recover. Yeah, if they're stiff or anything, you can.
She did that for racing horses.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you for the wonderful presentation. It was
Thank you.
great.
Thank you very much.